Hi guys, and welcome back to the podcast. Today I am delighted to welcome on Leo Ryan. Now Leo is a breath and performance coach. Leo, thanks a million for jumping on.
Brilliant. Lovely to be on here, Robbie. Looking forward to the chat.
Good, same. If you don't mind, will you give a quick background of some of the stuff that you do, where you're working at the moment, and I know you're owner of Innate Strength, so maybe talk a small bit about that as well.
Sure. Okay, I'm based in Drogheda in Ireland. I still do a lot of my work one-to-one, and then I'm growing online as well in terms of what I do. My background is about 18 years as a personal trainer, and I love all areas of that. Dived into everything from rehab to performance level of physical movement, into deep dives into nutrition, personal development, that whole way. And along the way, I realized that it was missing the most essential component, which was breathing. And that was based on my own history. So I went back years ago, maybe 2015. Like I've been doing that. That's how I entered the industry, was through breathing. And then about 2015, I went back and saw that there was a wave like building in that arena. I knew I had something of value to give, and I wanted to understand what was going on and how it could help my people. So really dove deep into that. And so now online, what I mainly do is I give coaching online based around breathing. I do have a few clients that I do build out their whole programs to, just because they get me and I get them, and happy to work with them. They're great in that sense. And then I run a load of events as well. So the likes of I'm a Wim Hof Method instructor, Oxygen Advantage Master instructor. So I'm starting to give education on breathing. Host events using the breath and cold therapy, and breath only events.
Okay, nice, excellent introduction. To go down the line of, like, I'm sure a lot of people that have listened to this would have heard of Wim Hof and would have heard of the Oxygen Advantage. What are I know, because there's so many different ways you can go about breathing. There's so many different things you can do. What are the difference between the two of those? Or what are the main differences?
The differences. Let me go with similarities. How's that?
Similarities, yeah.
Because they're way more in common than people believe.
Okay.
I asked that same question way back when I did my Buteyko qualifications, which is the Buteyko. The Oxygen Advantage is built on the Buteyko method, is a Russian method. Patrick McKeown originally went over to Russia, learned from Dr. Buteyko, took it back to Ireland, took it back internationally, and then developed the Oxygen Advantage from there. And when I was on that course, I met two Dutch ladies back in 2015, and they're like, "Oh yeah, we do the Wim Hof method." I was like, "The what? What are you talking about?" Yeah, we jump in the cold. I was like, "What are you doing? That's crazy." And then they went, and then we breathe big. We're like, I was like, whoa. And even Patrick at the time was like, "No, stop doing that." You're having a heart attack. But I was a bit curious, it would have happened to me before in physical movement, where I really refused to, I refused to do Pilates for years because I didn't like how they taught breathing within it. And I had a friend who was like, Leo, he hired me and he wanted me to run his Pilates class. And I was like, no, I'm not doing it. I don't like the way they breathe. And eventually says, Leo, I'm paying you. So I'm sending you on the course. They're going to go do it. And when I did it, and they explained, the teacher explained to me the reasons behind why they breathe like they do, I went, that makes so much more sense. You mean breathing is used for stability in the body, and this is an ideal way of creating stability? I was like, okay, I can do that. So by the time I got to learn about the Wim Hof in 2015, I was like, I was an open book. I was like, okay, let's go suss this out and see what's going on and what's happening in it. To where I eventually trained with Wim, went to his home in Amsterdam, went to Poland, trained with him, amazing guy, and learned what the method's about. And to answer your question, then, it's think of both methods as either sides of a continuum. So a continuum is a line, a linked line of of how breathing works. On the one hand, you have the Oxygen Advantage, which promotes calm breathing, nasal breathing, and then they use a lot of breath holding techniques. And on the other side, you have Wim Hof, which is more arousal, more energy inducing, more big breaths, mouth breathing, go hard breathing. But it's only for it's a specialized technique for a certain period of time.
Okay.
That's kind of where they're where they're similar, right? To ask the differences, what the Oxygen Advantage really does well, and the Buteyko really does well, is they are all about daily habits. They're all about how you breathe through the whole day. That's where the beauty of that is. So embedding nasal breathing as your predominant breathing mechanism, in other words, you breathe in through your nose and out of your nose, is vital for your health. Whereas the Wim Hof method doesn't care about that the rest of the day. That's not the point of that method. It's not that they don't appreciate it. In fact, a lot of the instructors now are co-certified, or they appreciate both sides of the spectrum, and they try and integrate the stuff in.
Okay. Great explanation of it. And with the Wim Hof method, then that's more of like, you're going into cold exposure. So you use it for like a specific time.
Yeah, I mean, the way Wim created the method was, look, he was a yogi from the age of 9. Like, he used to wrap his legs around his head. He was an expert yoga practitioner, and would spend and he was also completely off the grid. Like, he spent 9 years squatting when he was a young man. He used to cycle from Amsterdam to the Pyrenees in Spain and go rock climbing in Spain and mountain climbing in Spain.
Really?
That was his youth. That was his youth.
Okay.
So completely different lifestyle to what a lot of people experience nowadays. So he also wasn't constrained by those by society in that sense too. But anyway, long story short, he married young. They had a load of like 4 kids. His wife developed mental health issues, developed schizophrenia, went on a ton of medication, and ended up taking her own life. So in response to that, he did what he knew best, which was to escape and to try and come back to his senses. The only thing that helped him come back to his senses was getting into cold water. That was it. Getting into freezing cold water was the only thing that made him feel alive and feel good and helped to find his way through life. He then went on, achieved a ton of amazing different things. But when I talked to him, because I just wrote a book myself on breathing, and I interviewed Wim, interviewed Patrick, interviewed a few other people for it as well. And I really, because there is a marketing story about Wim now. I'm giving you what I heard from the horse's mouth in that sense, right? And I spoke to him, and that was one of the questions I had for him. I was like, look, which came first, the breathing or the cold exposure? And he was like the cold. I got him the cold. Now, with his background of yoga, but he got in the cold, and he noticed when he got into like ice lakes, climbing mountains, just in shorts, setting 9 Guinness World Records in ice baths. He noticed that when he got in the cold, his breathing went, it went really big mouth breathing. And then after a while in the ice, that it would begin to calm down. And I went, I wonder if I did that before I got in, what it would feel like. So he started doing his breathing before he got in. And he was like, whoa, this is pretty cool. I love this feeling. Then he get in the ice, and then he starts swimming under the ice. So obviously you're holding your breath under the ice. So he said, I wonder if I held my breath before I got in, what would happen? And so he used to do his big breathing, and then he used to do his breath holds, and that developed into the Wim Hof method. Okay. Now, as a disclaimer, you never do that breathing technique before you get into cold water or any water and hold your head under the water. You don't do it because you risk blackout.
Okay.
You'd risk blackout because you turn off your brain's sensor for breathing, and you're underwater, and you'd risk drowning. So, but as a separate thing, that's how he developed his whole breathing technique. So that's what I mean, is it wasn't about daily breathing. It wasn't about breathing for health. It was about coping with life, and it was his way of finding his way how to feel better. And then all the science came after that, and all the amazing things came after that.
Interesting. Okay.
Whereas the Oxygen Advantage came from Dr. Buteyko, who was a Ukrainian doctor, known as a Russian doctor, actually, back in the 50s. And when he was observing people in the medical wards, he noticed that the closer they got to death, the bigger their breath got, the more mouth breathing they did. And at the time, he was suffering from high blood pressure, where he was given 6 months to live because they didn't have medication for it back then. And he tried everything, did all the medication, was given no more hope. And it came to him as inspiration, where he started to slow his breathing down and do some breath holding techniques in his office. And he found very quickly, I think within a month, he was able to restore his blood pressure back to normal. And he was like, whoa, this is incredible. So then he started to, so he did the opposite of what he saw people doing on their deathbed.
Yeah.
So then he started to pull people off the wards with all different ailments, from diabetes to blood pressure to asthma to everything. And over 10 years, developed his methodology based upon physiology and the Bohr effect. And then that became known as the Buteyko method, and later on as the Oxygen Advantage, maybe about 70 years later.
Geez, yeah. There's so many, and the thing is, I know that there's so many other, I guess, practitioners that have different ways of doing things, and something that I want to get into talking to you specifically about before we jumped on it, this podcast. You were talking about it's a principles based approach, but just before we jump to the principles based approach, so obviously, well, I'm from Clare, so I'm out in the country, okay, and I'm out in the sticks, like. But I basically said to my father there the other day, I challenged him to see if he'd go down for a swim in the sea, and he was no, he wasn't. And then come 7 o'clock in the morning, the door bursts open and the light turns on, and he tells me to get out of bed, and we're going down into the Turlock just down the road here. Out of nowhere, I wasn't expecting it now, but
he ambushed you.
Geez, I was half asleep when it happened. But on the way down there, I was trying to think of, like, I was trying to jog my memory on what the Wim Hof method was, because I knew it was going to be called. It was a wind and it was rain, and it was going to be called getting in there. It was a nice little walk into it. So on the way down, all I was thinking about was increasing the amplitude of my breath. So like really inhaling and really exhaling, like as much as I could. Now I was only doing it for maybe a minute or 2 minutes, or probably about 2 minutes, I'd say, before I got in there. And I remember, if I remember correctly, there was a power stance involved in it as well that he does that I didn't get a chance to do. Now, it did help, but I don't think I did it right. So, any tips on how you could correct that? So, how you prepare yourself going into cold exposure? Like, is it just heavy breathing as much as you can?
The breathing is an aid to getting you in. Think of it like, look, instead of squatting in a gym with a barbell, you're using dumbbells, or you might even use band assisted, right? It's an assistance to help you develop your tolerance, to help you get in better. That's in that sense. That's why you would do it beforehand. Now, loads of good benefits to it. Helps decrease inflammation, helps change your state of mind, promotes good feel good effect through the opioid and cannabinoid system. But essentially what's going on with it is through the big breathing, you are dumping carbon dioxide out of your body. And when you dump carbon dioxide out of the body, the pH of the blood goes up. It alkalizes. Okay. As soon as that happens, two things go on. One, you generate a ton of adrenaline. And if you ever were in a boxing fight or a fight, or we're in a high stress scenario. Yeah. If you get hit with a punch, you kind of don't really feel it straight away. But the next day you're like, oh my God, that hurts so much. That's because of all the adrenaline that's in your body. It dulls that pain sense. And the cold was painful. Yeah. So the breathing helps with through adrenaline to dull that pathway. And then it also helps to calm the sensors in your skin for the sense of temperature and for pain. And the second pathway makes you feel good, helps you to focus, helps you to relax. All of a sudden you got 5 really powerful benefits that will aid you for when you get in. That's what the science has shown since those days.
Okay, all right. So, and what's the recommended time then for that? Should you be doing it 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes? Is there like a 10-minute block?
No, it completely depends on you in terms of how new you are to it, what you do. Yeah. I mean, the standard protocol for the Wim Hof method is 3 to 4 rounds. Within one round, you do 30 to 40 big breaths. Fully in, let it go. 30 to 40 of them. And then you follow that by an exhale and a breath hold at the bottom. Okay? So you do lots of big breaths. You exhale, hold at the bottom for as long as you're comfortable. And then you inhale and hold at the top for 10 seconds. Okay. There's 3 parts to that. Loads of big breaths, exhale, breath hold, inhale, breath hold for 10, and that's 1 round. Repeat that 3 to 4 times.
Okay.
And
Okay.
by the way, you'll find those on YouTube. Just go basic Wim Hof method breathing, and you'll see guided sessions on it. It's cool.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. No, I suppose I wanted it a bit just so I could see if I was in some way right. But the next time I'm going to do that, I'll probably be a bit more prepared, I think, for when it's going to happen. But in terms of, I know you're a judo.
How did your dad get on, by the way?
Oh, well, see, he had to show a tough face. Like he did well though. He did well. He powered into it. I went in kind of trying to keep like a nice zen face and that, but I know I was struggling on the inside.
Well, that's the thing is the cold is cold, hard is hard, pain is pain, and stress is stress. You can't hide from it. That's why it is such a great teacher and such a great training methodology for learning how you respond to stress in life, because it will show straight away in your body and in your mind what's going on.
And to kind of go down another pathway of that, I know you're a judo black belt recent. So is that recent you got that, or is that
got my second dan? Got my second dan recently. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay,
yeah,
congratulations.
Yeah, I was delighted that. I have a club up here in Drogheda, Northeast Judo Academy. Set it up with a French guy named David. And but judo for me is recreational. I was never an athlete, full-time athlete at judo. I came to it much later in life. In my young life, I came to it later. But I love it. It's an amazing sport.
Yeah, it's like, and really what I've been training at is jiu-jitsu for the last year and a half. But the elements of, obviously, I know it stems from judo originally, isn't it? Am I wrong in saying that?
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the first students of Jigoro Kano is the founder of judo. His first students went originally to America. Maeda was his name, as far as I know.
Yeah.
He went to New York, and he started giving demonstrations and doing demonstrations and taking challenges on. This is back in kind of the early 1900s. Found his way down to Brazil, was doing work for the consul in Brazil, as far as I know. And that's where he met Carlos Gracie. Carlos was helping him out and helping him settle in, and in return Maeda taught Carlos judo, which is, and that brand would have been a mixture of the Japanese jiu-jitsu and judo at the time. And then Carlos took it with Helio and changed the whole system and created BJJ.
Yeah, and there's a huge emphasis in BJJ, especially when you look at Hickson Gracie around breathing and different breathing techniques.
That guy is an absolute genius, and if you read his book, it's phenomenal.
Yeah, I actually haven't. I've listened to most of the podcasts that I can find with him at the moment, but I must venture into the book now very soon.
It's great. I mean, even that first 20 minutes of with Joe Rogan when he was talking about the book, that was about a year or two ago. It was brilliant.
How do you incorporate breathing techniques now into your own training with judo?
Okay. Depends on what my purpose is for, really. So with a sport like judo is I call it like there is some aerobic activity in it, but it's a power endurance sport. So you are constantly moving, constantly grappling, but you're also looking to produce that power in a flash, right? So I would use my breath. I use my breath for me. I want to keep it as calm as possible through the whole thing. So it's all nasal breathing. It's all nice and calm as I'm working through and trying to figure out that chess match with my opponent. And then when I want to produce force, I'll use it much like in a weight room. I will use it very powerfully with a powerful exhale. Yeah. And I'll do that with the exertion of the throw. So as I go to throw somebody, let's say over my shoulder, I want to produce as much force as I can. And because the diaphragm sits horizontal in the body, and all the kinetic chains, all the fascial chains run somewhat vertical or vertical at an angle through the body, as you exhale powerfully, it will tighten those kinetic chains. So from a mechanical point of view, it helps to create mechanical tension in the body to be used like that. It's why a sprinter stiffens on impact when they're pushing off the floor. It's why Bruce Lee used to teach, be soft, be soft, be soft up until the last moment before impact, and then boom, go hard. The breath has the same principle. The breath should be nice and soft, nice and relaxed all the time. And then when you need to use it, it switches on.
Okay. And
one of the most beautiful things that I use a breath for in judo is against opponents. So I'm tuned in just because of the training that I have, that I have an awareness of my own breath, but also a keen awareness of an opponent's breath.
Yeah.
And I remember there's a couple of really high level judo players in Ireland. When I was training with some of them, and they were smashing me to bits. I was getting thrown all over the place. It was ridiculous. But there came a point in the training where I sensed, and so they could tell by touch where I was going to go, because that's what an elite judo player would do, by their grips. But I could tell as soon as they fatigued through their breath. And now once an opponent, so my goal in judo is to fatigue an opponent and then to smash them. To put it simply. I won't out judo a high level person because they're too good for me, right? So what I'll do is I'll outplay them as a human being first, and then I'll execute my moves that I want. And that's my goal. That's my goal anyway.
Yeah, as good as any. That's a great idea, actually. And what are you noticing? Is it like labored breathing? Is it kind of faster breathing? What are you picking up on?
Yeah, as soon as somebody turns to mouth breathing, they're in a stressful breathing pattern. And if you're stressed, you can't think. Forebrain shuts down. You can't think clearly. That goes for anything in life. So in a sport like that, you're working it so that you get them mouth breathing, you get them big breathing, you get them that they can't think clearly, and then they can't execute their game plan.
Okay, yeah, that's actually it's a good one to pick up on. I think that with jiu-jitsu, especially, you'll always know if, let's say, if you make a mistake and someone gets your back and they're looking for like a rear naked, where when they're on the back, there's most of the time there's only a couple of options that they have, but as soon as you can hear them breathing in your ear, you nearly know that you have them, that you're going to escape. You know that they're putting too much pressure into this, and just wait it out. Just give it a couple of seconds. They will break down.
Unless they're a smart arse where they know that and they pretend that they're doing that to fatigue you.
That's where the chest comes in then, isn't it, really?
That was it. There was a famous runner known as the Czech locomotive back in the day. He was in the 50s. He was the first person ever to win the 5,000, 10,000 and the marathon in one Olympic Games. He won it in Helsinki 54. And he was very famous. He was one of the first ones to introduce interval training into his training program, and also hypoventilation or breath holding techniques into his training. But he used to run. So he was running the marathon. He never ran. Sorry, he won the 5,000 first of all, won the 10,000. There was his main events, and then decided on the day he was going to enter the marathon, because he could do that back then. And so he'd never ran a marathon in his life, at least in competition anyway. So he steps up, and there was a British guy, Brian Peters, who was supposed to walk away with this marathon. So he sets out with Brian Peters, and he's running alongside him. And apparently he was chatting away to him and talking to him. And he was getting, a quarter of the way into the race, and he was talking, and he was like, geez, this is, and he says to him, this is a really tough pace that you're setting, I can't keep it up. And Brian turns around and goes, no, this is only a jog, and takes off. So Emil Zatopek was his name, by the way, the Czech locomotive. So Emil goes and he's keeping up with him, and he's like, and you look at his running mechanics, are like, oh my God, this guy is going to collapse any minute now. So we get to about halfway through the race. Brian Peters drops out of the race. He set the pace too high. Emil got into his head. Emil takes off, ends up winning the marathon as well. First person to win all three.
Jesus, that is some achievement, isn't it?
That was back in the 50s.
Yeah.
Crazy, right?
It is those people though who are like ahead of the game that can take advantage of it for a couple of years. Really, like you see that with it. If you just take advantage of it for a couple of years, like the Fosbury flop was the other one, where people didn't really understand what he was doing when he was going for the high jump. Like it's those little changes. I know, and in Patrick McKeown's book, he talks about, I think it's in that book anyway, he talks about the American track coach who used to get them to hold water in their mouth as they ran around the track.
I don't know about the American track coach. I know that was originally came from a tribe that they use it as an initiation process.
Okay.
That the youth, the boys who wanted to become men, part of what they had to do was to run a super long distance. Now the distance has gone from my mind, but they would first of all take a mouth of water, and then they'd have to run their distance and then spit out the exact same amount of water at the end, to say that they'd completed the event.
And
Yeah.
why was like, what's the, I maybe I missed it. Maybe it wasn't in that book. Maybe it was in a different book that I was reading at the time, but it's obviously to promote nasal breathing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That's the idea of it.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose let's jump into that a bit. Why do they want to promote nasal breathing?
Well, mouth breathing is a stressful breathing pattern. So you're gonna dehydrate yourself quicker, you're gonna burn through blood sugar quicker. And then that's one side of it. Another side, and then you're gonna light up that whole ANS and that whole sympathetic nervous system quicker. Which means you'll burn through all that fuel a lot quicker and burn out quicker. On the other side of things is nose breathing is how you're designed to breathe. Full stop.
Yeah.
So think of it. Think of what does your mouth have, and your stomach have, and your gut have for breaking down food. It has loads of stuff. You have teeth in there. You have saliva in there. You have gastric juices in your stomach. You have bacteria in your gut. Loads of stuff to get the most out of food. What does it have for air to filter air? Zero.
Yeah.
Whereas the nose has hairs, it has mucus, it has cilia, it has nitric oxide, it has enzymes, it has a huge filtration. That, like, your nose isn't just that big pointy thing at the front of your face. If you take your tongue and roll it along the top of the roof of your mouth, that's all your nose. It takes up about a third of the space of your skull. It's one of your senses, smelling. It's like, it has so many good functions and benefits. I think there's over 73 or 4 functions of the nose. But if you're not breathing through it, you're going to dull all of those senses. It's an immune system barrier. It helps to regulate carbon dioxide, which means it helps to keep the brain nice and calm, and helps you to focus and keeps you calm under pressure to reduce panic and fear. There's so many good benefits. So, like, I could keep going. There's loads.
It's yeah, because it is one that, like, that really opened my eyes to it, the effect of nasal breathing, and I suppose, like, the maladaptions to mouth breathing, what happens to your body after it, even in just the structure of your face, and how you have, like, you'll know so much better than me now, but I know your teeth are a lot more crooked, your face is narrower, it comes to a point. Like, there's a lot of
I know, because that's the shape of my face.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't always like this, right?
I'll
say it. Like, I got a terrible structure. If you even look at my nostrils, and I know this is on audio, but if you were to look at my nostrils, they're really, really narrow. I've got quite a long nose. I do have a narrow jaw. I had 11 teeth extracted as a kid.
Really? Yeah.
Give me straight teeth. And if you look at my teeth now, they're crooked as hell. So not only did they take out 11 of them, they wanted to take out an additional 4 when I was about 18. And I was like, no way.
Yeah.
Like, I've done, mainly because at the time it was cost. But then I learned that they shouldn't be doing it anyway.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, look, your tongue is one of the most powerful muscles of the body. And when you close your mouth, your tongue rests on the roof of your mouth. That's where it rests, which means it exerts pressure on the roof of your mouth and on the shape of your mouth. Without that pressure, your palate lifts and becomes more narrow. Your teeth, your jaw will form more narrow as a child and as a teenager. Your teeth will bunch. Your airways may narrow as well, and has a huge knock-on effect down the road. Even with all that, and even as bad as I was, like, I was an asthmatic my whole life till I was about 19 or 20, until I spent about 6 months in bed when I was about that age, 19 to 20. And doctors gave me no more hope for getting rid of my illness or for managing it any better. And that's when I first came across Patrick. He just came back to Ireland. I think he qualified 2002. This was 2000. It might have been 2004, actually. I met him, trained in the Buteyko method, and started to restore that nasal breathing. I can now, if you were to put me on a VO2 max, I cannot do that with nasal breathing because of my anatomy. Some people can, I can't. But I've got it to a level where I'm on no more meds. I've no symptoms. I'm a trainer for the last 18 years. I play all the sport that I like. I haven't been to a GP in, God knows, maybe 12 years. I'm able to manage, respiratory viruses and all the rest naturally. I'm living a great life. That's how I consider it. Yeah. And that was all just through lifestyle habits and training. That's it.
And what would you say were the ones that had the biggest impact on you in terms of lifestyle habits? Would you say it was like the nasal breathing side of things? Would you say it was the Buteyko method?
Well, they came together.
Yeah.
The Buteyko method was the one that promoted nasal breathing. That was the first one that I ever came across anyway. So that's what I learned was with the Buteyko method and with the Oxygen Advantage. One, they say they want you nose breathing day and night at rest and all low level activity, right? Two, they give you techniques then to build your lungs, to build your breathing system so that you can nose breathe all the time. And then they want you to reduce the amount of air you're breathing to be much calmer when you're taking your breaths subconsciously. And that's the key, calmer subconsciously.
Okay.
So that's what it's all about. And as a daily habit, it's still about that today for me.
Yeah.
And the science is only getting stronger and stronger and stronger. You now have orthodontists. There's only, I think there's at least when I've got a 13-year-old, 12-year-old, and a 5-year-old girl. So maybe 8 years ago, like they developed mouth breathing for different reasons. One was born with her cord wrapped around her throat from birth, and had mouth breathing. Another one developed a virus. They thought it was the chickenpox for the second time. And then they said, oh, no, it can't be that because it can't. And then they said, no, it is. Anyway, her immune system flattened. She developed mouth breathing through that. And my other girl, she had a lot of emotional attachment issues from birth. She had a twin that died in the womb. Okay. And I could see emotional attachment issues from the very start. And she developed it through there. From there into, they weren't breastfed for a terribly long time. And then into the modern foods that we have. They're all contributory factors to mouth breathing. There's no one route to it. And that's the thing. It's just such it is it's a seed of who you are as your breath. And it's a foundation of all movement. So there's many routes to leading you to adapted breathing. But the way out of it is to train it specifically and then to build a lifestyle that supports it. So then you don't need to train it anymore. And then just your lifestyle promotes it. That's what it's all about for me.
And okay, geez, there's a lot of, I can see, because I know from even just talking to, like, let's say my own family, when I was boxing, basically I smashed my nose, so multiple times. And I have a deviated septum on the left side at the moment, so that left nostril is blocked. But it was only when I started reading that book, The Oxygen Advantage, and there was another one at Anders Olsen as well. He's an interesting perspective on it.
Yeah, he's a Buteyko practitioner. He's the exact same.
Oh, is he? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he's a Buteyko practitioner. Yeah.
But when I started looking at that, I noticed that I had actually changed because that side of my nose had been blocked all the time. It just became easier to start breathing through my mouth. Like it just so much easier. So, and I could see the shift happening, or I could see, not that I could see the shift happening, but I could see how it happened or how it developed. I know there's lots of other ways as well with like stress and a stressful environment and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Are you able to, when someone becomes a mouth breather, are you able to actually make long-term change to become a nasal breather, or do they have to be more conscious of being a nasal breather?
Yeah,
do you know what
I'm the proof of it.
Yeah.
So like went from a total of 6 months in bed, 3 inhalers a day, 425 steroid tablets in a year, and 14 courses of antibiotics. I know that because I actually kept my tax forms, and I found them like 6 years afterwards. I was like, oh my God.
Jeez, that's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah. And from given no hope, where the doctor says, hey, I said I wanted to be a trainer at the time. Now, here's the thing. Now, just listen to how lifestyle impacts this. At the time, I was studying computer science. I ended up in computer science out of the Leaving Cert, and I hated it. And it wasn't for me. And I was looking at change. And during that year, I was the most sick I'd ever been in my life.
Yeah.
Coincidence, coincidence, you can decide. But as I trained that, and I said before I got training it, I said to the doctor, look, I'd love to become a fitness professional. And he just laughed me out of the room. He says, I can wrap you up in bubble wrap, put you away in a room till you're 25, and I don't know if you'll get better. They were his words.
Jesus.
And I was like, in my mind, like my mind just broke. And genuinely it broke. But life continued on as normal. Nothing changed. Until a month or so later, my mom rang me up out of the blue and said, there's this course that's come to Ireland. And that was Patrick's course. From my visit to the GP he did get me a appointment with a respiratory consultant. That was 12 months later. I had trained my breath every day and built in the lifestyle habits. When I talked to the respiratory consultant in Beaumont, he says, "Oh, Leo, how's things?" I said, "Great." He says, "How can I help you?" And I says, "Well, actually, you have one file. Doesn't matter anymore." I says, "I have a new file." And I give a file of training and habits that I've done. And I was like, "What are you talking about?" I says, "Well, this is what I've been doing." He says, "Yeah, I know the method. I know Patrick. And that's fantastic." He says, "What do you want from me?" I says, "I want to come off my medication." And he says, "Okay." He says, "Well, look, you know your body. You know how to manage it. Come off slowly." And he showed me how to come off it slowly. He says, "But if you need to go back on your inhaler, just keep it there." And I was like, okay. I ended up having it for 10 years in a press. And it took me more than 10 years to restore my immune system from then. But 18 months from when I first walked into the GP's office, I became symptom and medication free.
Wow.
To absolutely nothing. Now, later on, if you fast forward to what I do now, what took me 18 months, it's taken my clients from, it depends how severe they are and their dedication to a program. I've seen people restore breathing in as little as 4 weeks because they're relatively healthy, to 6 months.
Okay.
And because I've just learned how to build in other techniques and tools and how to deliver a more effective program.
Yeah. That's like, I must say, even from looking at it from the consultant's perspective, very forward thinking consultant that he allowed you to come off that much medication. Even obviously he had a knowledge of it as well. So a lot of people, like, from my perspective, I know, like, let's say when you're looking at people who have long-term injuries or back injuries, and there's a huge emotional side to that as well. As you said, that you were your sickest when you were at a time in your life that you probably weren't your happiest either. So on an emotional side of it, I get people coming to me all the time who their consultant tell them to stop running or to never run again because they have knee OA, something that's very manageable. They might tell them to never bend down or don't lift weights again. Like, different things, like and then when a consultant tells them that, it's extremely hard to break that belief.
It's in there.
Yeah.
Well, I had that belief from my GP, where he told me that if they locked me away till I was 25, there was no getting better. What that broke in me was a couple of things. One, I wanted to play for Dublin and play inter-county ball. I was a really good footballer, but I was light and I was sick way too often. Like, I was playing Sigerson ball at the time, but I was way too light, way too sick too often. So that affected my belief in me as a person and in what I could do. Like, for example, put on weight because I needed to, put on strength, put on power, like achieve my dreams, because sure, how could I if I was sick every couple of weeks? To the point where I actually didn't think I'd see 40 years of age.
Really? Yeah.
That's how much it affected me mentally. Then, so that's how much the GP, and by the way, my GP at the time, I had other GPs before that who saved my life. Like, they came to me in the middle of the night to administer medication. And that's how much I respect them. Like, that's how caring they were. The guy at the time, when I went back after seeing the consultant, after coming off the medication, after being symptom free, I went back to him with 3 clinical trials and Patrick's book, and he knew what the consultant said, and I came back to give them to him as a gift to say, this stuff is amazing. You should really start sharing this with your patients. And he says, Leo, it's a placebo effect.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And I was like, I'm going to strangle you. So yeah, like, the power of especially a person in power, the power that their words have over you is like a magic spell. And there was something that you said in that was, did I think it was the techniques or the nose breathing during the day? It's funny, when you start along that path, for me, it was the breath, right? When I start along that path and started all that training, breathing itself has a compound effect on everything in your body, your nervous system, your heart. I mean, your heart sits into your diaphragm. There's no separation. So effect on blood pressure, effect on heart rate, effect on the brain. Your breathing is linked directly to anxiety, panic, and fear in the brain. It's in the same place. It's part and parcel of the same system. It's also attached to your ability to focus and to concentrate as well. It's linked to everything. So as I trained that and built that, I came across stuff like, and I remember in Patrick's original course, he actually recommended Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now at the time. And that was my first kind of personal development book. And it just my mind. And then you had synchronicities happening where I had people, you know, I was doing emotional work with other people and doing all those good stuff just started to come together. So I don't ever think that it's one single thing that restores you. It ends up being, you have to go through lots of different things, but there's one thing that you're motivated by, that you are willing to travel that path on. For me, that's what I call like the innate strength way, which is, for me, it was breathing. And if somebody latches on to breathing for whatever reason, because they're stressed, or because they want to climb a mountain, or because they want to be awesome in their sport, or because they have panic or asthma or whatever, if they link onto that and they connect with that, then that will be the path that will set them off. And because the breath is so powerful and connected to so many things, it creates a massive shift in somebody's life. Far more, I actually think far more than exercise, and far more than cold water therapy and anything else, because it is such a vital role in the body. But whatever your pathway is, like, just go for it.
And it really and the amount, obviously, when you look at how often you exercise or how often you get into a cold tank or into the sea or whatever, as opposed to how often you're breathing, there's no comparison. You know, there's no comparison. So it's something that I when I'm working with clients as well, like if they have, so with an injury, with the long-term injury, and people who are listening to this podcast will have heard me say this often, is that with, let's say, a long-term shoulder injury or a back injury, the nervous system then gets very sensitive to that area. Okay, so like as I'm sure, actually, because you're involved in training as well all the time, so as you'll know, like, things can flare it up. It'll start to get very sore, and straight away when they go into a movement or a position that they don't like, their breathing will kick off. So like straight away, and it's so easy to see it. So I suppose from my perspective, often I'm trying to change that or correct that breathing. Now, what I do is I usually try to introduce that breathe light to breathe right, that idea, because in relation to what I'm working on, I don't know if what comes first, the chicken or the egg. Does the breathing increase, or is the pain increase and then the breathing increases after? So really, I just try to attack it from, or I shouldn't say attack, fix it from both sides. From both sides. For me, when your breathing is adapted, in other words, when you're breathing in a pattern that isn't nice and calm and relaxed when it should be, right? Calm, relaxed, gentle nose breathing is your center. Okay. It's where you're balanced on either side of the equation, and you can access either side. But if you go around with adapted breathing, that you're and holding your breath, or you're breathing big, they're adapted breathing patterns. All of those sensitize your body to carbon dioxide and sensitize your body to pain. So that means it's always like you're living on the edge of pain, and all you need is a tiniest little thing to tip you over the edge, and then boom, you're gone. So then, whether that tiniest little thing is that your thought pattern goes, I don't like this, or it's going to be painful, straight away,
all of a sudden you're already over the edge. It's already happened.
That's the thing. And it's like trying to target it and trying to work on it from so many different aspects. For me, a lot of the time, even when you look at the language that people use around their body, is a big one. Like, so trying to work on that as well. but to shift back to the side of the emotional states and how breathing affects your emotional states. And I know it's something that from when we were talking before, you were talking about that's a big part of the book that you're writing at the moment. Let's look at that a small bit. How do you, like, obviously you can breathe fast and you get really hyped up, breathe slow and you get nice and relaxed. You have that side of things. But what are the main principles that what you're always looking at when you're working on breathing?
From an emotional point of view.
From an emotional point of view.
If there's tension in your breath, then the likelihood is that you are suppressing emotions somehow and pain somehow. So think of your breath. What is your, how do you express emotion? We laugh, we cry, we shout, we communicate. That's how we generally express it. And what is laughing and shouting and crying and communicating or talking? But it's your breath with your voice box, and then it builds out into your whole body. Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. So if you have an issue regulating your emotions, typically you're either overexpressing, you're the whole time, you're just revved up to the nines, or maybe you just keep it all in there and lock it in tight so that when the shit really hits the fan, then you explode. like that Inside Out movie, right?
Yeah.
But that's what it is. Now, if you I like the principle. Josh Waitzkin had a book called The Art of Learning.
I love it, yeah.
Which I used a lot of those principles before, and I saw in judo for years. But the principle of making circles smaller. In other words, you can express. So I use both sides of the equation. There's two parts to this principle. One is make circles smaller. The other is boundary conditions. Boundary conditions is a physics principle, which is you test the boundaries of an event to see how well it reacts and how well it holds up, right? So that means if you want to test what you're like at stress, you could really either take yourself into a really stressful situation and see how your body and brain and mind react, like the cold, for example, or you could make the circle smaller, which means you could really look at the very essence of what's going on. And then from that point, you train yourself to make the circle bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and expand it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you look at expressing emotions, a lot of people just get when they're reading people, they're just looking at the big emotion being expressed, whether it's laughing or crying or shouting or anger. What I do is I will peel that right the way back and I'll go, well, what are the mechanics of what's going on? So how the essence of expressing emotions is breathing. That's the first physical part of an emotion, is your breath. So when I do a breathing assessment, I'm looking at how the breath moves through the body. When they're lying down and they inhale through the nose, does the belly rise? It should. I'm not listening to other movement practitioners. I know they're like, oh, the ribs go. That's different. In a subconscious body, when the person's lying down, does the belly rise and the lower ribs rise? It does. Does the chest rise? It does. And can you let go of the exhale? If you can do those three things on a full breath when you're lying down, well, then most times you don't have an issue with emotional regulation, or you have less of an issue. Once I get the mechanics moving right, then I go into balancing carbon dioxide, because that has a big role to play with fear in the body. And so I look at breath holding techniques for building your tolerance to carbon dioxide. That's the next biggest circle. And then finally, I'll work with rhythms like Wim Hof, where I'm making the circle bigger again to test the boundaries of their breath and see how they respond. And then I'll apply it across the life. How are you getting on in life? Whether that's, getting in with somebody into a cold bath, getting into a sauna, getting in under a bar and training and moving, or in their sport, or in their relationship life, in their career. I'm looking to see how their breathing responds in that. Because if that's good, then everything else is healthy in that sense in the organism.
Okay. And I'll go into CO2 tolerance training in a minute, and actually want to talk about breath work and breath training and the difference. But you said something there about letting the exhale out.
Mm. I knew you picked up on that.
Yeah. What does that mean?
Well, what does it mean to you?
Well,
oh, I'm gonna throw that one back on you.
Nice. Okay. No. If I was looking at, from my perspective, if in the way that you use it, I'd be thinking that somebody's actually able to fully relax, to fully exhale, to without having to force it out, and
Bingo.
without exhaling a small bit and then trying to inhale really fast after it.
Bingo. Without any tension in the exhale. None. It's
Okay.
like a spring, right? You first of all coil the spring and then you let it go. Yeah.
Yeah.
You release that power, you release that tension from it. So it's the exact same thing with the breath. It's the same principle there with the breath. So in other words, if at the top of your inhale, are you holding your breath? Or are you pursing your lips and blowing it out? Because you're just can't cope with a minute. Yeah. Or are you closing over the throat? I'm gonna kill him. I'm gonna kill him. Right?
Yeah.
That's tension in the breath and in the body. That's you suppressing your emotion in and keeping it in. And sometimes there's a need for it. That's no problem. But in a healthy system, that needs to be released at some stage during your week or your month or your year. It's not if you suppress it in every now and again, but if you're consistently doing it, if you're consistently shutting your breath down, well, then that'll have a huge effect on you over years and decades.
Okay. And when you say, does that mean like taking a bit of time to work through your, like a breath work training or a breath work? No, sorry, I shouldn't say that. Breath work, or is it like do you take the time to go through like a training regime? Do you know?
Okay, so this brings us on to delineating between training and breath work, which I made that separation. I don't know many other people that have in the world of breathing, and many other coaches. So a lot of coaches confuse the terms or they mix the terms, which is fine. That's their thing. For me, there's two very, very different goals from them. Breath training is a planned and structured approach to restoring your breathing. That's it.
Yeah.
Much like a training program for, I don't know, run a marathon, competing in the Olympics, doing anything. It's a structured approach to restoring it. Okay. Because I think actually, when it comes to breathing, 90% of the benefits of breathing are rehab. So the reason why people need breath training is because our environment isn't set up to be healthy. And so we have adapted our breath to suit our lifestyles. So once you restore your breath, you don't really need to do much with it. Like, do I train it every day of the week? Absolutely not. No way. Maybe I do it once a year for a couple of weeks.
Oh, really?
That's about it. That's about it. Yeah. I have much better things to do. But my lifestyle supports my breathing.
Okay.
So I breathe healthily because I'm really active. I eat decent food. I've got a good emotional balance. I got a good balance through all of my life. My nervous system is good. I sleep well as a whole. Now, every so often I drive myself into the ground and push myself too far. And so I need to restore and rehab. No problem. But that's how I think of breath training. Breath work, on the other side, is about using the breath to connect with your mind and your spirit. It's about getting to know you at a much deeper level and where you are in life at a much deeper level. So typically it is a experience to be had. In other words, I'm going to go up to my bedroom, or I'm going to go off to a class and do a breathwork class. It's going to last typically anywhere between 10 minutes and even up to 3 hours. And it's taking time out to close your eyes, connect to the breath, and go inwards to the mind and the spirit.
Okay.
And you can then add on other aspects to that to make that an even better experience. And you can do that with the Wim Hof breathing. You can do it with holotropic breathing, there's millions of methods out there. But that's what breath work is. Now, there's also a short version of breath work, which is like using a breathing technique to change your state of mind temporarily. For example, Andrew Huberman just today, he's a big neurophysiologist in the States. He's a huge podcast. He came out with thank God, produced his paper on the physiological side, because I've been looking for this for years and couldn't find it. Where it says that breathing techniques are faster and more effective at changing your state than mindful meditation.
Okay.
The first time ever, it's now been shown in science that moving your body will change your mind better than trying to access the mind straight away. Now, I said move your body to change your mind for years because I've just noticed it. Whether it's going for a workout, people notice it. They feel better afterwards. They can think more clearly. Or even in the essence of breathing. Because almost all meditation is based on the breath anyway. So as you do one of these techniques, whether it's box breathing or physiological sighing or any one of hundreds of techniques, if you do them for anywhere between 2 and 10 minutes, I typically use them between 2 and 5 minutes, they will change how you feel. They will lower your stress levels or your states of arousal. They'll help you to relax and to calm and to think much more quickly. And they're the three kind of dimensions of how breathing really help you. Breath training to restore, breath work to explore yourself and your own life and mind. And then you have short breath work or breathing techniques, which help make you feel better in the moment temporarily, but doesn't necessarily have a long-term effect.
Okay. Brilliant differentiation of them. I'm sure you've done that 100 times as well, or 1,000 times at this stage, to have to try break up and tell people the difference between it.
Honestly, no. So the reason why I wrote the book was because there's nothing out there which has, there's no book out there yet that takes this view on breathing. Because I don't know why, I'll be honest with you. There's not too many modern people that have been in the game a long time that aren't associated with a particular method and hooked into a method or a way of life. For example, just a yogi, where you're looking at from just that point of view.
Yeah.
I'm just blessed because of my own life and my own experience that I have a very eagle eye view on the human body and on training. And so I take that very broad perspective, and I have a unique one with breathing that I've built this in as well. That's all it is.
And on a point that you made there in terms of like in relation to mindfulness meditation, obviously, as you said, like there's that level there that you have to try and unlock the mind and go straight at the mind. But the foundation of mindfulness meditation is breathing itself. Is the foundation of breath work then, would you say, training, like breathing training, or can you work on breath work without having that foundation?
So as I went through the Wim Hof method and became an instructor with those guys, first of all, you have to be careful with long breath work, because everybody's individual and their stresses are individual in life and their traumas are individual. Yeah. And some people have had it much tougher than others. And so when you use breath work, you want to traverse gently with it. You want to go gently with it. You don't want to just jump into a really powerful session and use the biggest, most powerful version of it that there is, because you'll create those emotional states in your body. It's the same way as saying you wouldn't get a beginner to go into a gym, throw 100 kilos on a bar and start squatting reps. You just wouldn't, because you'll break them in two, right?
Yeah.
So even when you do breathwork sessions, they're very empowering, they're very inspiring sessions, right? In other words, you'll very often, if they're done well, you will feel amazing coming out of it. You'll be like, wow, it's like a dream on times a million. Like you just feel like, wow, this stuff is incredible, which then puts you in a great state of body and mind to then make the rest of life much easier. fantastic. But more often than not, your breathing patterns, your daily breathing patterns don't change with breathwork. Sometimes they do, but not all the time. Okay. Which means that if your breathing patterns haven't changed, then your body is still living in an adapted state of being, which means that you don't have a strong center. You're still likely to drop into emotional states, into stress states, or into depressed states, and you can't regulate yourself so well. Whereas breath training, the whole purpose to it is to restore your breathing. By doing that, you've now centered the most fundamental aspect of you, which means that you're now much more centered and you can access those states either side much more easily. So for me, it's all about breath training. Like, I love breath work as an experience and taking people on it and adding in some personal development and law of attraction stuff, which just, really helps people to get on track. But for me, it's all about breath training.
Yeah. Okay. It's and where, like, in relation to the book, do you talk about breath training a lot in the book? Do you have different frameworks for people to work through?
It's not framework. So the name of the book is going to be called Breathe Free. Okay. It starts with first of all setting out the general state or lay of the land with breathing, setting out why I think we are weaker now, and almost every human being is weak physically. I'm not talking about in your biceps or in your quads, but I'm talking about as a whole human being, because our society is set up like that through nobody's fault, through nobody's intention. It's just that's the way the world is. We live indoors 93% of the time, is what stats say, between houses and offices and cars. We sit more than ever. We exercise less than ever and move less than ever. We eat pretty poor quality food on a whole. We don't sleep so great. I mean, this is not good for the human biology.
And in terms of even that, like the convenience, people leaning towards convenience and comfortable, like being comfortable all the time is the other side of things, which is
exactly like we did that originally because it saved our lives. Shelter and food are bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? But now we've gone so far and we've actually done it so well, so intelligently, that it's now hurting us.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. 100%.
So from that point of view, like, I set that out and then I go, okay, and this is how it's actually happening in your body from a nervous system point of view. And then this is how this is seen within your breathing. Then I dive into, well, this is the effects that actually has the multidimensional effects. I talk about its effects on heart and cardiovascular system, jaw and anatomy, emotional states, asthma, bronchitis, COVID-19, all that stuff, how that affects it and is affected by it. I talk about all those different disease states, and then I go, okay, if this is where we're at, now how do we restore it? So then the second half of the book is kind of a coaching program. So it's kind of, I would call it semi-structured. And there is a structure to it, but there's room for you to maneuver through it, because that's kind of how I work in life anyway, and to take people through it. And just so that you know, if you remember what I said earlier on about boundary conditions, I start a lot with breathing mechanics. I move a lot into what's called CO2 tolerance, or balance in the gases in your body. And then I go to rhythms, which is breath work.
Yeah. Okay.
So breath work is still a key part of training. But typically people that do a breathwork session, they don't understand that. It's part of the whole. So what I want to do is build the whole one step at a time, looking after the potentially weakest person in the room so that everybody has a good experience and can develop themselves fully.
Yeah, it's like, I'm actually really looking forward to that. It sounds, as you said, it is a principles-based approach of building that foundation and building on top of it then and taking the next step forward. When are you expecting to have it out?
So we're recording this early January. I actually sent it for final edit 3 days ago. So I hope to have it out in 3 months' time. So it'll be February, March, about April 2023. That's the goal.
All right. Okay.
When I say the goal, by the way, I actually eliminated all goals, because I'm about 5 years writing this thing, and I've set that goal so many times. I'm now at the stage where I'm a broken man from that point of view. I'm just like, it'll be done when it's done. But I can see the end. That's what I'm saying. I would foresee that there's about 3 months to get it to market. Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Geez, that exciting times after putting that much work into it.
Really exciting. Really exciting. I'm pumped for it because then I want to start giving talks. I want to start, like, I love podcasts, are brilliant. I love getting live in front of people and explaining stuff and taking them through stuff. So haven't been doing that for a while because I've just been so immersed in building those foundations. So looking forward to that.
And would you recommend writing a book? Because I don't know if I've ever asked anyone, would they? And that many people have said. Everyone's like, the work that goes into it is hard to even measure.
You pick up any book. Well, what I appreciate about a book, a website, anything nowadays, a house, somebody or a team of people have literally laid every brick. They've written every word. They've spelt every single word in that. And I didn't really appreciate that so much about a book before now. And now I'm just like, I'm just in such gratitude about it that it's amazing. For myself, one of the hardest things I've ever done, but I would do it a million times over because it's helped me to structure and to really, they say the best way to learn is to teach. Yeah. So to really put all my thoughts and then be able to communicate it well, where you have editors looking and going like, no, that's rubbish, Leo. Like the first edit I had, I cut like 50,000 words out of it. And that was already at a 5th draft or 4th draft stage. So that's just me and my book and what I've done. But there's been a lot of work in it. And thank God for COVID, because that lockdown gave me a lot of time to write.
That good in a way.
Yeah, one good thing that came out of it.
Exactly. All right, I don't want to hold you much longer now at all. A question that I like to ask people, especially coaches who are involved in it, is I like to ask, what is your like idea of health itself? What does health mean to you?
For me, it's about having enough energy to do the things you need to do, to add in the things you want to do and love to do, and to have some spare energy at the end of the day, the week, the month, and the year. So there might be times where you push it hard. That's okay. You step back, you restore, you come back. But as an overall throughout your year, that you have that energy to do everything you need to do. Because I think if you have energy, you feel great, you're doing stuff, you feel great, you're looking after your baselines, you feel great. That's health. Your body will work really well around that.
Yeah, excellent. Perfect definition of it. But Leo, I could hold you for another hour, 2, 3, or 4 hours, but I'll wait till the book comes out, and I'll just because I want to dive into that and make sure to get all the different elements of it. So the next time I have you on in time, if you ever were to jump on again,
you can tear me apart.
I can tear you. That's the goal. So I suppose to finish up, where can people find you? And yeah.
Brilliant. My website is innatestrength.com. There's a dash in that, so innate-strength.com. My socials is at innate-strength on Instagram or at I am Leo Daniel as a personal one. I'm now I'm at the stage where I've trained a couple of guys up in Oxygen Advantage because I'm a master instructor and that I can do that. And they're coming on board and help me coach, just because as I get full and can't take on any more people, now we've got a support crew and building just an organization where they can grow and then eventually go off on their own and feed back to us, where spread the word on it, because I just think it's really, really powerful.
Excellent. And who would that suit? What type of people would that?
So again, what I'm focusing on, or what we focus on, is breathing free, which means breath training, and then we do breathwork events, right? So we do breath training online, we do coaching online. Eventually, we'll have a membership site, but it's all one-to-one coaching online to develop your breathing. Then we add in events around the country. We're around Ireland at the moment.
Nice.
And yeah, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, I'll have to get up to one of those soon. Well, it's not. I'm going to be heading away, so I don't know if I'm going to make the next one. But when I'm back, I'll make sure to do it.
And we work with people who are. It's not just about disease or pain, but you know, I've a guy now at the moment who's training with me. He's looking to become the first Irish guy to summit Everest without oxygen.
Really? Yeah.
Pretty cool. Yeah, which is pretty cool. So he's an interesting dude. Like, well, there's ultra marathoners there. I've a couple of judo people there. A girl that she swam the English Channel last year. So I love all sorts of athletes, all sorts of people that come to me and go, geez, I really want to do this. Will breathing help? And I'm like, let's embed it in, because it will, because it's the seed of everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. So I suppose, Leo, thank you so much for jumping on and taking the time to go through everything and laying it out. And especially even that you gave so many details there for people to take home and start to work on themselves. I really appreciate it. But yeah, anything you have to leave before you leave?
Absolutely. No, my pleasure, man. I'm just delighted to be chatting to you and connecting with you. And yeah, loving it.
Looking forward to jumping in one of those courses in the future, and really, really looking forward to the book coming out as well.
Feel for Robbie. We'll chat soon again.
Take care.